Hey, little wizards. Today's gonna be pretty short. I got a bunch of school stuff that I gotta rock through today. Um, we are working harder than ever as teachers, so woo golly. We are starting chapter 12, the Patronus. There is like sunlight on this side of my house, and on that side of my house, it is really dark and stormy. So if things start getting ominous, which means like dark and scary, just know that it's just a storm moving through. All right. Chapter 12, The Patronus, which is like my favorite part of the third book and movie. Harry knew that Hermione had meant well, but that didn't stop him from being angry with her. He had been the owner of the best broom in the world for a few short hours, and now, because of her interference, he didn't know whether he would ever see it again. He was positive that there was nothing wrong with the firebolt now, but what sort of state would it be in once it had been subjected to all sorts of anti-jinx tests by the professors? Ron was furious with Hermione too. As far as he was concerned, the stripping down of a brand new firebolt was nothing less than criminal damage. Hermione, who remained convinced that she had acted for the best, started avoiding the common room. Harry and Ron supposed she had taken refuge, or cover, in the library, and didn't try to persuade her to come back. All in all, they were glad when the rest of the school returned shortly after New Year, and Gryffindor Tower became crowded and noisy again. Wood sought Harry out on the first night before term started. "Have a good Christmas," he said, and then, without even waiting for an answer, went on. He sat down, lowered his voice, and said, "I've been doing some thinking over Christmas, Harry. After the last match, if the Dementors come to the next one, we can't afford for you to, Wood broke off, looking awkward. I'm working on it," said Harry. Remember, he's getting lessons. "Professor Lupin said he'd train me to ward the Dementors off. We should be starting this week. He said he'd have time after Christmas." "Ah," said Wood, his expression clearing. "Well, in that case, I really didn't want to lose you as a secret, Harry. And have you ordered a new broom yet?" "No," said Harry. "What? You better get a move on. You know you can't ride that shooting star against Ravenclaw." "He got a firebolt for Christmas," said Ron. A firebolt? No, seriously, a real firebolt?" "Don't get excited, Oliver," said Harry gloomily. "I haven't got it anymore. It was confiscated." And he explained all about how the firebolt was now being checked for jinxes. "Jinxed? How could it be jinxed?" "Sirius Black," said Harry warily. "He's supposed to be after me, so McGonagall reckons he might have sent it." Waving aside the information that a famous murderer was after his seeker, Oliver Wood said, "But Black couldn't have bought a firebolt. He's on the run. The whole country's on the lookout for him. How could he just walk into Quality Quidditch Supplies and buy a broomstick?" "I know," said Harry, "but McGonagall will want to strip it down." Wood went pale. I'll go and talk to her, Harry," he promised. "I'll make her see reason. A firebolt? A real firebolt on our Gryffindor team? She wants Gryffindor to win as much as we do. I'll make her see sense. It's a firebolt. This broom must be real special if everybody, even Hermione, is losing their mind over it. Like, it's got to be top notch." Lessons started again the next day. The last thing anyone felt like doing was spending 2 hours in the grounds on a raw January morning. But Hagrid had provided a bonfire full of salamanders for their enjoyment, and they spent an unusually good lesson collecting dry wood and leaves to keep the fire blazing, while the flame-loving lizards scampered up and down the crumbling, white-hot logs. The first divination lesson of the new year was much less fun. Professor Trelawney was now teaching them palmistry, and she lost no time in informing Harry that he had the shortest lifelines she had ever seen. Palmistry is like it's like fortune telling from your palm, like the lines on your hand. So, you just see it a lot at like carnivals, and there's like some other little pop-up shops. It'll be like, read your palms for $20, and they tell you what's going on in your life, by reading your palmistry, or your palm lines. It was Defense Against the Dark Arts that Harry was keen to get to. After his conversation with Oliver Wood, he wanted to get started on his anti-Dementor lessons as soon as possible. "Ah, yes," said Lupin when Harry reminded him of his promise at the end of class. "Let me see, how about 8 o'clock on Thursday evening. The history of magic classroom should be large enough. I'll have to think carefully about how we're going to do this. We can't bring a real Dementor into the castle to practice on. Still looks ill, doesn't he? Said Ron as they walked down the corridor, heading to dinner. What do you reckon's the matter with him? There was a loud and impatient "t" from behind them. It was Hermione, who had been sitting at the feet of a suit of armor, repacking her bag, which was so full of books it wouldn't close. And what are you tutting at us for? Said Ron irritably. Nothing, said Hermione in a lofty voice, leaving her bag heaving. Oh, it should have been like this. Nothing, said Hermione in a lofty voice, heaving her bag over her shoulder. Yes, you were, said Ron. I said, I wonder what's wrong with Lupin, and you, well, isn't it obvious, said Hermione, with a look of maddening superiority. If you don't want to tell us, don't, snapped Ron. Fine, said Hermione haughtily, and she marched off. She doesn't know, said Ron, staring resentfully after Hermione. She's just trying to get us to talk to her again. At 8 o'clock on Thursday evening, Harry left Gryffindor Tower for the History of Magic classroom. It was dark and empty when he arrived, but he lit the lamps with his wand, and he waited only 5 minutes when Professor Lupin turned up, carrying a large packing case, which he heaved onto Professor Binns' desk. What's that? Said Harry. Another boggart, said Lupin, stripping off his cloak. I've been combing the castle ever since Tuesday, and very luckily I found this one lurking inside Mr. Filch's filing cabinet. It's the nearest we'll get to a real Dementor. The boggart will turn into a Dementor when he sees you, because it's what you're most afraid of, so you'll be able to practice on him. I can store him in my office when we're not using him. There's a cupboard under my desk that he'll really like. Okay, said Harry, trying to sound as though he wasn't apprehensive at all, and merely glad that Lupin had found such a good substitute for a real Dementor. So, Professor Lupin had taken out his own wand and indicated that Harry should do the same. The spell I am going to try and teach you is highly advanced magic, Harry, well beyond the ordinary wizarding level. It is called the Patronus charm. How does it work? Said Harry nervously. Well, when it works correctly, it conjures up a Patronus, said Lupin, which is a kind of anti-Dementor, a guardian which sets as a shield between you and the Dementor. Harry had a sudden vision of himself crouching behind a Hagrid-sized figure holding up a large club. Professor Lupin continued, the Patronus is kind of a positive force, a projection of the way that the Dementor a projection of the very thing the Dementor feeds upon, hope, happiness, and the desire to survive, but it cannot feel despair as real humans can, so the Dementor can't hurt it. But I must warn you, Harry, that the charm might be too advanced for you. Most qualified wizards have difficulty with it, which means like fully adult graduated wizards have difficulty with it. It's really tough. What does a Patronus look like? Said Harry curiously. Each one is unique to the wizard who conjures it. And how do you conjure it? With an incantation, which will work only if you are concentrating with all your might on a single, very happy memory. Harry cast about for a happy memory. Certainly nothing that had happened to him at the Dursleys was going to do. Finally, he settled on the moment when he had first ridden a broomstick. Right, he said, trying to recall exactly as possible the wonderful soaring sensation in his stomach. The incantation is this. Lupin cleared his throat. Expecto Patronum. Expecto Patronum, Harry repeated. Expecto Patronum. Concentrating hard on your happy memory, Harry? Oh yeah, I've got it, said Harry, quickly forcing his thoughts back to that first broom ride. Expecto Patronum. No, Patronum. Sorry. Expecto Patronum. Expecto Patronum. Something whooshed suddenly out of the end of his wand. It looked like a wisp of silvery gas. Did you see that? Said Harry excitedly. Something happened. Very good, said Lupin, smiling. Right then, ready to try it on a Dementor? Yes, said Harry, gripping his wand very tightly and moving into the middle of the deserted classroom. He tried to keep his mind on flying, but something else kept intruding. Any second now he might hear his mother again. But he shouldn't think of that. Or would he hear her again, and he didn't want to? Or did he want to? Lupin grasped the lid of the packing case and pulled. A Dementor rose slowly from its box, its hooded face turned towards Harry. One glistening, scabbed hand gripping its cloak. The lamps around the classroom flickered and went out. The Dementor stepped from the box and started to sweep silently towards Harry, drawing a deep, rattling breath. A wave of piercing cold broke over him. "Expecto Patronum!" Harry yelled. "Expecto Patronum! Expecto!" But the classroom and the Dementor were dissolving. Harry was falling again through a thick white fog, and his mother's voice was louder than ever, echoing inside his head. "Not Harry! Not Harry! Please, I'll do anything!" "Stand aside, you silly girl." Harry! Harry jerked back to life. He was lying flat on his back on the floor. The classroom lamps were alight again. He didn't have to ask what happened. If you haven't figured it out, he fainted again. "Sorry," he muttered, sitting up and feeling cold sweat trickling down behind his glasses. "Are you all right?" said Lupin. "Yes," said Harry, pulling himself up on one of the desks and leaned against it. "Excuse me." "Here," Lupin handed him a chocolate frog. "Eat this before we try again. I didn't expect you to do it the first time. In fact, I would have been astounded if you had." It's getting worse," Harry muttered, biting the chocolate frog's head off. I could hear her louder this time, and I could hear him. Voldemort. Lupin looked paler than usual. "Harry, if you don't want to continue, I will more than understand." "I do," said Harry fiercely, stuffing the rest of the chocolate frog in his mouth. "I've got to. What if the Dementors turn up at our match against Ravenclaw? I can't afford to fall again. If we lose this game, we've lost the Quidditch Cup." "All right then," said Lupin. "You might want to select another memory. A happy memory. I mean to concentrate on. That one doesn't seem to have been strong enough." Harry thought hard. He decided his feelings when Gryffindor had won the house championship last year had definitely qualified as very happy. He gripped his wand tightly again and took his position in the middle of the classroom. "Ready?" said Lupin, gripping the box lid. "Ready," said Harry, trying hard to fill his head with happy thoughts about Gryffindor winning, and not dark thoughts about what was going to happen when the box opened. "Go," said Lupin, as he pulled open the lid. The room went icily cold and dark once more. The Dementor glided forward, drawing its rattly breath. One rotting hand was extending towards Harry. "Expecto Patronum!" Harry yelled. "Expecto Patronum! White fog obscured his senses. Big, blurred shapes were moving around him. Then came a new voice, a man's voice, shouting panically. "Lily, take Harry, go! It's him! Go! Run! I'll hold him off!" The sounds of someone stumbling from a room, a door bursting open, a crackling of high-pitched laughter. "Harry, Harry, wake up!" Lupin was tapping Harry hard on the face. This time it was a minute before Harry understood why he was lying on the dusty classroom floor. I heard my dad," Harry mumbled. That's the first time I've heard my dad before. He tried to take on Voldemort himself, to give my mom some time to run for it." Harry suddenly realized that there were tears on his face, mingled with the sweat. He bent his face as low as possible, wiping them up on his robes, pretending to do up his shoelace so that Lupin wouldn't notice. You heard James?" said Lupin, in a strange sort of voice. "Yeah." Face dry, Harry looked up. Why, you didn't know my dad, did you?" I did, as a matter of fact," said Lupin. We were friends at Hogwarts." "Listen, Harry, perhaps we should leave it here for tonight. The charm is ridiculously advanced. I shouldn't have suggested putting you through this." "No," said Harry. He got up again. "I'll have one more try. I'm not thinking happy enough things. That's what it is. Hang on." He racked his brains. A really, really happy memory. One that he could turn into a good, strong Patronus. The moment when he first found out he was a wizard and he would be leaving the Dursleys for Hogwarts. If that wasn't a happy memory, he didn't know what was. concentrating very hard on how he had felt when he realized he'd be leaving Privet Drive. Harry got to his feet and faced the packing case once more. "Ready?" said Lupin, who looked as though he was doing this against his better judgment. "Are you concentrating hard?" "All right, go!" He pulled off the lid of the case for the third time, and the Dementor rose out of it. The room felt cold and dark. "Expecto Patronum!" Harry bellowed. "Expecto Patronum! Expecto Patronum!" The screaming inside Harry's head had started again, except this time it sounded as though it was coming from a badly turned radio. Softer and louder and softer again. He could still see the Dementor. It had halted. Then a huge silver shadow came bursting out of the end of Harry's wand to hover between him and the Dementor. And though Harry's legs felt like water, he was still on his feet. Though for how much longer, he wasn't sure. "Ridiculous!" roared Professor Lupin, springing forward. There was a loud crack, and Harry's cloudy Patronus vanished along with the Dementor. He sank into a chair, feeling exhausted as if he'd just run a mile, his legs shaking. Out of the corner of his eye, he saw Professor Lupin forcing the boggart back into the packing case with his wand. It had turned into a silvery orb again. "Excellent!" said Lupin, striding over to where Harry sat. "Excellent, Harry! That was definitely a start." Can we have another try? Just one more." "Not now," said Lupin firmly. "You've had enough for one night. Here." He handed Harry a large bar of Honeyduke's best chocolate. "Eat the lot, or Madame Pomfrey will be after my blood. Same time next week?" "Okay," said Harry. He took a bite of the chocolate and watched Lupin extinguishing the lamps he had rekindled with the appearance of a Dementor. A thought had just occurred to him. "Professor Lupin," he said, if you knew my dad, you must have known Sirius Black as well." Lupin turned very quickly. What gives you that idea?" he said sharply. "Nothing. I just know they were friends at Hogwarts, too." "Yes, I knew him," he said shortly. "Or, I thought I did. You'd better get off, Harry. It's getting late." Harry left the classroom, walked along the corridor and around a corner, then took a detour behind a suit of armor and sank down on its plinth to finish his chocolate, wishing he hadn't mentioned Black, as Lupin was obviously not keen on talking about the subject. Then Harry's thoughts wandered back to his mother and father. He felt drained and strangely empty now, even though he was so full of chocolate. Terrible though it was to hear his parents' last moments replayed inside his head, these were the only times Harry had heard their voices since he was a very small child. But he'd never been able to produce a proper Patronus if he half wanted to hear his parents again. "They're dead," he told himself sternly. "They're dead, and listening to echoes of them won't bring them back. You'd better get a grip on yourself if you want that Quidditch cup." He stood up, crammed the last bit of chocolate into his mouth, and headed back to Gryffindor Tower. All right, y'all. I'm going to put a link to the movie scene to this down below. You don't have to compare and contrast, but it's just something for you to watch if you want to. And it's very different. It's pretty different from the book, but it's still really good. So I really like the visual effects in it. So I'll put that in. I hope you guys have a great day. Stay dry. Get some work done. If you finish the math thing, I will send you a prize. All right. Talk to you later. Bye.